This is Cinematic Suffering, where we watch every horror movie streaming on Netflix, from A to Z, for better or worse. Life is pain, and so are bad horror movies. Hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Cinematic Suffering. This is a podcast where we judge and review and judge some more every horror movie streaming on Netflix from A to Z.
That's right, and judge harshly we do.
We try to, at least. We like to give a fair shake of the stick at certain films, though, I would think.
I think so, too. I think that we've been fair. I think we've gone into this with a positive attitude, which is a good way to go through life.
Sure. I mean, starting from the first episode, I thought we were going to rip it apart when we gave it a mild tearing of the butthole.
Yes, that's true. we spanked its butt just light red, not purple.
So I am one of your co-hosts. I am Jason.
I'm Clay.
And Clay, we have a movie today that is, very endearing and seemed fun upon first seeing the title. Can you tell us what it is?
Yes, it's an Indian film, the third in 7 movies. Almost half of them have been Indian films. This one is called 6 minus 5 equals 2. It's a confounding title. We'll see if it makes any sense. It doesn't. It was released in 2013. It was written, directed by newcomer directors K.S. Ashaka and Swarna Latha. And the actors all in this thing all speak Kannada. And this is the first movie that was ever filmed that all the actors spoke that language. So it's groundbreaking in that way and only that way.
So is Kannada a regional dialect or language in India?
It is. I didn't look into it too much, so I can quickly run out of steam on my know-how on this one. But it's one of the whatever you'd call it, like the established languages of India.
Okay.
It's considered an actual language, and I'm sure we'll get into this. But it was weird, like they would lapse into English almost as much as they speak Kannada. So that was very interesting for me.
And I think we brought that up on 1920 and 1920 London. They did the same thing on those movies. They would lapse into certain English parts. It was
this one, it seemed to be even more pronounced. Like they would say whole sentences. Like it wasn't even an odd phrase that didn't have a direct translation. They was like, no, we're going to be lapsing into English for the next 2 sentences, and then we're going to phase back. So yeah, it was interesting. But the film is essentially a Blair Witch knockoff. So if you've seen Blair Witch or any of the found footage movies that have inspired it, you've kind of seen this movie. Just insert really weird, plucky Indian folks, and you've seen the movie.
Going into that, before we jump into it, I hold on. Let me add that this is not a spoiler-free podcast. That everything we're going to be saying here is going to have to be filled with spoilers. So we insist that you watch the movie first and then come listen to the podcast, because I think everyone would get more enjoyment out of that. But if you don't, that's fine too. You're just jumping in here. Hopefully you'll know what we're talking about, especially as we start going back and forth between the names and characters, I should say. And that goes for every film, not just this specific one. But I will go back and let's talk about found footage films real quick, because we were talking briefly today, just kind of going back through Messenger, and I remember when Blair Witch Project came out and the hype that surrounded it, because it looked like this is like an actual documentary, and this theater was going to release it, and I said theater, this film production company was going to release it, and everyone, it seemed there was a lot of people that believed that the Blair Witch Project was something that actually happened. Me, on the other hand, being a wise horror thespian, not a thespian, what am I?
A lover of film, a neo. I don't know. What would you call that? A film sexual. I don't know.
A horror film sexual. And I knew it was not for real, but I did enjoy the marketing aspect, and I did think how they marketed it was amazing. And then, of course, I went and saw the movie, and I walk out of there horribly disappointed.
See, I had kind of a different take on the Blair Witch Project. Maybe it was who I was seeing it with, my frame of mind. I grew up as a kid in the national forest area of Ohio. My parents had a place just right in the woods, so I had been lost, not trapped tragically. There's no great story, but I'd been lost in the woods before, so it kind of resonated with me in that way. And I like the marketing too. It's the logical progression of the based on real events. Like horror movies have been doing that since the 60s and 70s. That old trick of
Yeah.
this is based on real events. And I talked to dummies that really were like, did this really happen? And I said, no, it didn't. Yeah, it really did. Well, they refilmed it, but it really happened. Like, no, it didn't. None of this happened. It was written. It was written. But yeah, I think we both have us and we could probably do a whole podcast episode just on found footage movies. What's your take on the genre just in general? Like,
I've been a fan of it, to tell you the truth. There's a lot of people that aren't fans of it. My wife is not a fan of found footage movies, but I will gladly sit and watch Paranormal Activity, Paranormal Activity 2, the Wreck series, the Spanish version, and there's also an American remake or
yes, I've seen it.
yeah, I can't remember what the name of it for some reason off the top of my head, but I enjoy them to a point. Some of them, of course, are ridiculous. Put the camera down for fuck's sake. But but I think I was telling you earlier through messages that maybe in the early days of found footage, you could kind of look at it and say, no one would have the camera running during these traumatic moments. But with the way the technology is and the way the improvements in video technology as far as cell phone cameras go and everything, that it doesn't seem that implausible that it could happen now.
Well, that what comes to mind is that the standout episode of that movie that is just totally just drawing a blank. It was a bunch of dudes go out with a camera in their eyeglasses that's recording everything, and they try to make sex tapes, but instead a vampire lady chews them all up, and it was part of an anthology.
Yeah.
But I guess my point
VHS.
is. Yes, awesome. Yeah, that was a pretty good found footage, experiment in my mind. And, like in a world of GoPro cameras, it makes a little bit more sense than some jackass that's holding a camcorder and filming to the bitter, ugly end.
The full clunky camcorder that sits on the shoulder kind of thing. That seems ridiculous.
And you see it a lot in the Blair Witch, and you definitely see it in this one. It's like, okay, I guess and what's funny is where the cameraman fails, the camera picks right up for him. So we're treated to everything that happened to these folks. But found footage. It's one of those. So let's dig into the movie, I suppose. The film stars, oh God, this is going to be fun. The film stars Darshan Apurva, Krishna Prakash, Vijay Chendor, Pallavi Tanuja, Ramesh, and Maruthanjaya. Oh my God!
I will applaud you.
Good
job. I will say I had trouble distinguishing which name ended and which one began, but that's perfectly fine. That's just my stupid American ignorance when it comes to
I
names.
apologize for mangling these people's names. They seemed like very nice people, beautiful people.
They do it. This movie it starts out saying, with a kind of a documentary feel. It's supposed to take place 3 or 4 years earlier in 2010.
Yes.
Or at least the found footage does. There's a producer that's going around trying to get this made, and he's interviewing very briefly a couple of people about what happened in these woods in the northern mountains of India.
Yeah, the main person that we see interviewed in the movie as it starts off is this guy named Raja, and I was immediately like, "That's my cat's name. My cat's name is Raja Bhatnagar." I had to give him, a full Indian name. I believe it means king in Hindi. Someone will correct me on that, I'm sure. But Raja is the main character, and he's the sole survivor of this little hike in the woods that his friends took, and he's being interviewed by this production company that's going to turn his story into a movie.
Yeah, and the interviewer, the production company, I guess the producer, is interviewing Raja and asking about the found footage and what exactly happened, and Raja doesn't really have a lot to say about it. He just kind of breaks down crying near the end of the interview. And It was kind of like one of those. It looked like a fake cry, and at first I thought, oh, Raja had something to do with this.
Oh, but no, that would have made it too interesting.
And yes, so unfortunately, Raja breaks down crying. It feels like a fake cry. Ho ho ho! Boo hoo
The whole
hoo!
his whole acting feels fake. It's like otherworldly fake to me. The way he his eyes are real wide and his mannerisms, just everything about him it was strange right off the bat for me.
Yeah, yeah, it was strange right off the bat, and like I said, it kind of gave me that suspicious feeling that Raja had something to do with it, since he was the only survivor. I will say the actor who plays him did a fine job in the outer moments when they're out in the forest and everything. It's just in this one that he just felt a little bit too creepy.
Something, yeah, like you almost get a false sense of Raja from this interview that they established in the beginning of the movie. But we quickly learned that there were six friends that went into the woods. Raja was the only one that came back. Raja should have lawyered up, by the way. This guy just informs him, like, we're going to make a movie out of this. Is that cool? Like, no, well, after you talk to my lawyer and we talk about royalties, you can make whatever you want. I need a book deal, Jack. I'm going to.
Oh man, yeah. The so after we get through the whole interview process, we jump into, I guess, essentially day one of.
Day one, we meet the four. There's, like I said, there's six of them, and we meet four of them first. We meet Raja, who's the affable hero and the lone survivor. We meet Sid. He's the filmmaker and cameraman. He's kind of like this handsome, really confident. He seems like he's gone to a couple dance clubs in his day and ordered some Grey Goose, and so he's the cameraman. We got the lovable big guy Lula. He's kind of reminded me of an Indian chunk from the Goonies.
Yeah.
And we've got BJ, who is he could almost be Raja's brother. I thought, like, he's this confident, good looking, likable guy. BJ.
Yeah, BJ, and they each have their own kind of quirks and perks around them. I'm not sure if they were three-dimensional characters per se, but they had their, you had the smarmy, good-looking guy. You had the shy. I thought Raja was kind of more of a shy-ish kind of man, but Lula was, of course, the comedic relief.
Yeah, he's fat, so he's got to be the comedic relief.
We see Raja pretty much shitting in the woods the first time we see him out there.
It's just, God, it just right into it. Like they go and they film Raja shitting by a tree. Like, where's Raja? He's shitting by a tree. Like, why do you know that? You guys are already way too familiar. They try to get footage of Raja taking a dump. He runs into the lake, and it's just. They hit you with a lot of tomfoolery right away.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of what do they call it?
Monkey shines. I don't know, hijinks.
They were horsing around when they should have been getting to business. That's what should have been happening.
Yeah, like and I guess that it's the typical horror movie way of putting you at ease and everybody's having fun so that the horror can come in later. Oh, foreboding.
It's the first big flaw of this movie is that there's a lot of tomfoolery and horsing around. And I don't want to sound like a naysayer or a Debbie Downer, but there's only so much, dick punching and, watching fart jokes and watching people try to shit on someone's head while they're sleeping that it's like, okay, this has nothing to do with the story. Let's go. When are we going to see something?
Just strap in, folks. You realize right away, we're going to need to strap in for this one.
Day one, so they make their trek into the wilds, and then we just kind of fade out, and it goes to day two. I can't remember that much from day one. I just have in my notes, intro to guys fucking around before they make their trek into the wilds. Yeah,
they meet the girls. The girls are introduced. We have Priya and Suhana are the two pretty girls in the group. So I felt like, oh, you girls, be real careful. It's a sausage buffet, and these guys are obviously mentally ill.
well, Suhana, it was established as BJ's girlfriend.
Yeah, and so one Priya, of them's off the market right away. So
and Priya, it was Suhana's friend that she got with her.
Yeah, I mean, six of the six main characters were likable, despite the fact that they weren't very well drawn. I guess it was so weird. Just I don't know whether it was a cultural thing that's just the way that people act with one another. It seemed very weird.
There was a lot of ball busting between the guys, calling each other idiots and fatso, and I just, I mean, I know me and my friends and me, we fuck around a lot and we bust each other's balls, but if someone kept calling me an idiot or fatso or some derogatory term that I did not like and they knew I didn't like, there'd be problems very quickly. But this is
Yeah, like my time is limited. It's one of the lessons that older people learn in life is you excise those people from your life. I never would have gotten caught up in this camping trip because they would say, "Lula's going." No, man, I'm out. I'm out. No Lula for me.
I'm out. He's a dick, and I don't enjoy him calling me a skinny waste turd bucket. Whatever. I don't know.
And he wakes up. It's this one quick scene that we got to talk about for just a second. Is they wake this dude up by levitating his balls and butt over Lula's face, his sleeping face, and I was just
Raja
would be off. It'd be off at that point.
Yeah, Raja says, "Oh, I'm naked. I'm gonna." We don't see anything, of course, but Raja kneels over where Lula's sleeping with or squats over, I should say, and all I can imagine is just a big, hairy, dark butthole spread out, waiting for Lula to look at, and we get all that suspense going because Lula wake up, and Lula eventually wakes up, and he stretches, and he rubs his eyes, and it's making a show before he finally opens his eyes, and when he does, big gaping brown butthole right in his face.
And then he gives Raj a rim job. No, that doesn't happen. But it was so weird. And again, I don't know if it's a cultural thing. Like that's just the way Kannada people pal around. But if one of my friends did that to me, I'd be like, man, we need to, that really fucked me up waking up to your
that shit happens, dude. I haven't been a part of it, but I've seen it happen, and frankly, I'm embarrassed for myself that I didn't say anything. But what are you gonna do?
Let's see how this unfolds. So, you're right. It kind of does just smash right into day 3. We're getting there's a lot of padding. They get set up. They buy their camping supplies. They talk to Raj's dad. There's no point in us doing that. Just Raj's dad basically is not a fan. It's like, this guy's a shithead and you're all going to die in the forest. He doesn't say anything important.
No, he says, "Oh, Raja, I've tried to get him married," and everyone asks him, how many women have you introduced him to? And the father, I think it might be the uncle actually. And
was it?
Yeah, and he says 45 women, and Raja's turned down 45 women, and everyone starts, giving Raja shit for that, and he's just kind of looking downcast. I'm like,
I wonder why he's turned down so many young ladies. Whatever could it be? Never comes up, but I have a theory, and it has something to do with him putting his brown eye on his friend's nose first thing in the day.
Not that there's something wrong with that part.
There's nothing.
There's something wrong with putting their brown eye on someone's nose in the morning. But
you have to get signed affidavit saying it's cool.
Yeah. But yeah, day 1, 2, and 3, they just kind of push through, and I think on 3 is actually when they go out and they start taking selfies, and Lula, of course, being the big guy, starts bitching and moaning about walking all the way to this peak that BJ points to. He says, we're going to walk all the way over there to that peak, and Lula, but to be honest, I'd be bitching about that too. I was like, dude, that's far away. We're not going to get there by any time soon.
Like, I'm on this trek because there's girls, and I thought we were going to get drunk, smoke pot, and maybe try to get laid. But if the laid thing is not on the docket, fine. But I'm not traipsing all over Hell's Half Acre. Fuck this. And he even makes some kind of comment like, you guys are going to be dragging my body back. And I was thinking, oh, you big silly, you're all going to die.
He also made another good point of, why don't they just go and drink beer or something by the lake or by the ocean, because they're near the ocean.
Capital idea.
I was like, that would be amazing. I would love to do that too, Lula. But unfortunately, everyone wanted to walk up a hill for 10 hours.
Yeah, let's get exhausted and most likely die. So yeah, they start walking. They point to the peak that they're walking towards, and I guess you could be argued that this was the point of the movie to put us at ease. But man, what a beautiful hike! I was thinking
Oh
like this
yeah.
was gorgeous. As long as I wasn't, if we could excise a couple of these douchebags from the group, this would be friggin' perfect. As two pretty girls, a couple of the dudes seem okay. We could get rid of two of the dudes. It'd be perfect.
And the shots they did were beautiful. I mean, the countryside and where their location was just amazing to look
I
at.
look, it looked gorgeous. Yeah, just beautiful. It really did.
So Siddhartha is, or Sid for short, is just kind of filming this all himself, but sometimes he trades the camera back and forth so everyone else kind of gets a handle of the camera, and we can see Sid sometimes in frame.
Yeah, which was like a kind of a downfall of the first Cloverfield movie. Kind of fell into that trap to where the cameraman was just this off-camera disembodied character. So I guess that they did their homework when they were watching other movies. They didn't learn their lessons, but they did their
Yeah,
homework.
right, exactly. For some reason, BJ creates a flag that they're gonna post at the top of the peak once they get to it, but Lula, in some kind of weird thing of revenge for going on the hike or something, throws it over the cliff and says,
Yeah,
it's pretty
it
much
should have
fuck
been.
this flag.
It should have been the white flag of surrender is the only flag that would
Not that
be
they had anything to
half.
that didn't have anything to do with the movie whatsoever. But then again, a lot of this stuff doesn't have to do with the plot. Most of this is just padding. Um,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
they find a large mountain that's beautiful and grand, and they find a cave and take some selfies in the cave.
Yeah, up until the second act of the movie, it would be a great way to advertise that what they should have been filming a commercial for the hike. Like
Yeah,
we'll be your guides through beautiful Kannada land.
yeah. The Indian Registry, Forest Registry would would be a perfect advertisement for them to put out.
And it's been 10 days since we've had a loss out here. So.
Hikers keep disappearing up in this certain part of the mountains, though, particularly where you're going near the large stone mountain, the cave. Yeah, don't go there.
But by all means, continue on. Well, this is a good transition for like in the midst of all this goofiness, just over the top kind of like Japan, almost like it reminded me of like a Japanese comedy level of silliness. We just smash cut to this tree that they find when they find their campsite, and it's this tree of human bones. There's just
And
skulls in
dolls.
the
Yeah.
tree. Yeah, like it'd be the kind of shit where like we're leaving now, and they just take it in stride. It was the
Not,
weirdest thing.
not only do they take it in stride, but Sid takes one of the goddamn skulls off the tree and brings it
Yeah,
back to the camp. And if anyone did that, I'd be like, we're leaving now. This is bullshit. Why is there a tree out here anyways with skulls all over it and little stupid handmade dolls? But you took a skull. I'm not superstitious, but I'm starting to get there. I'm
the
getting there.
most stone cold atheist
Yeah.
among us would be like, you put that you fucking have you never seen Poltergeist? This is exactly why that movie that family's house got sucked into the vortex. You madman.
Oh, and just a slight tangent that may come into play later, but because of what happens with Raja. But the guide at the very beginning, when they're kind of chilling out at the home base that they rented out before they go on this trek, the guide or whoever the forest manager that was in the area says, anytime you come across a water source, fill up on water. And I see them filling up on water from like waterfalls and different water sources. And even I know not to drink the water around here in the mountains, because you don't know what's
Yeah.
in the mountains or what's in that water. You gotta boil it.
Yeah, I'm guessing that Bear Grylls was not, or the Indian equivalent of Bear Grylls was not real popular over there. Yeah, that it's just full of parasites. It'd be like, feel free to drink from the river if you want to shit out squirming worms,
And
and
that's my point, that they didn't explain it, but something befalls Raja later. Actually, it's not that much later. It's
no, it's like pretty much. Well, okay, let's
yeah.
we it like they camp. They camp right next to the murder tree. And this again, like I don't think that I can really overstate this enough. The movie has been a fucking comedy up until this point, and then we just cut to this murder tree full of human skulls, and they're like, it seems like a good place to camp. There's voodoo dolls in the fucking tree, and they camp right near this monstrosity. They deserve to die. They're just so unaware. And during the night, some creepy foreshadowing happens, some boilerplate Blair Witch shit, but some foreshadowing nonetheless.
Yeah, so I have to just add, by the time they find this tree, we're already a little over 40 minutes into the movie when nothing has happened up to this point. It's just them bullshitting around, slapping each other's asses, making off-color jokes about each other. And now we finally have something of a plot starting to develop.
Somewhat, yeah. It's
somewhat. I put finally in my notes when the tree when we see this tree full of skulls. But yeah, Sid brings one of those goddamn skulls back to the camp, and I already wrote, I'd say that was a mistake.
Yeah, it's I've seen a horror movie before, and that's never a good. I've seen the Family Guy episode where Peter did that, and that's not a good idea. So don't fuck with the skull tree. It just don't mess with it. But he does, and the camera they're getting ready to go to bed, and the camera switches itself on, and the skull is just sitting there in frame, and then a bottle shatters near it. Just so
yeah, the skull.
The head hand.
Yeah, the skull is actually looking at the camera when it turns back on. It goes off, and then when it turns back on, the skull is looking at the camera, and then that bottle shatters. I just need to go off on another tangent here. Are horror movies in some kind of different universe other than maybe Scream? Scream was like, oh well, they basically knew the horror movie rules, which aren't all true, by the way. But it seemed like they were trying to explain, kind of doing a tongue in cheek. It seems like if this is 2010. Certainly these guys have seen horror movies before. They know how shit starts. They're obviously religious because they reference God all the time. So if they believe in God, they think there's obviously something else out there that's evil, right? And so
yeah, but zero self-aware, and that's a good point. That's a fascinating point actually, because in Scream, they kind of take us with it. There's enough, wry nods to the camera that they're kind of like, come on, they're inviting us, the audience, into it. This one, we're watching it from the outside, and we're watching something that's just bananas weird. And you're right, everybody in a horror movie doesn't seem to have much self-awareness, situational awareness, and they've never seen a fucking horror movie in their life.
Exactly. If they'd seen any horror movie, none of this would happen, though. So we got to assume that everyone in these horror movie universes are just naive to the fact that this shit happens until it finally does.
Or just the hubris of youth. The nothing bad's going to happen to us. We're going to drink pond water. We're going to desecrate murder trees. We're going to ignore voodoo dolls. And, we're going to,
And don't forget voices that call your name in the dark.
Yeah, that happens.
Siddhartha. I was like, okay, I'm going to take this skull back to camp and hope nothing bad happens.
I'm going to apologize vigorously to the skull, and we're going to get the fuck out of here. Nope. You're in for the long haul.
Oh, God. Well, okay, so after we get back from this little tangent, I'm sorry that we took us on there. We're back at camp. It's around...
They get up in the morning, and Raja isn't feeling good. He's despondent, and he's in his sleeping bag, and he's just he's sick.
Oh, we got to go back just a little bit before they wake up, because that mysterious stuff does happen, but that happens at 2 in the morning. I was looking at the timestamp on the camera that they had. But before that, they were cooking dinner at around 9 at night, and then they put on this music, and they all started dancing to the music.
Like idiots. Just annoying.
This is where I thought, oh no, is it going to happen? Are we going to have a music and dance number in a found footage movie?
Thankfully, no. They don't break the fourth wall the same way that 1920 London did to great comic effect. It's just they just basically flounder around like a bunch of shitheads. They dance the way the Snoopy or the Peanuts characters dance in the Christmas special. Just this spastic flailing of limbs.
Yeah, and I was so happy that it didn't turn into that. That was at 47 minutes in.
Well, I mean, they had to have been biting their own cheek. I bet you, like another side note, they made a Hindi remake of this movie, and I bet you that there's a song and dance number in that movie. It's got to be. They can't not have done it.
So they go to sleep, and the thing with the bottle and the skull happens, and we flash into day 4. And this is Sid actually goes back to the skull tree with the camera and walks around, and he finds a fresh new doll is on the tree that wasn't
Two
there.
new dolls.
Yeah,
Two. Yeah, there's two new dolls
yeah.
in the likeness of the girls Priya and Suhana. And again, he's just like, curious. Moving on.
So yeah, Sid goes back to camp, and we see Raj has a fever, and he's come down. He's very sick, and I'm just thinking, boil that water, bro. Gotta boil
Yeah.
that water.
Yeah, it's your fault. Like, and so being the good friends that they are, do they stay with him? Do they go to get help?
Of
Do
course.
they try to walk him back? No, they
Oh, they
fucking
don't.
leave him. They just leave him. They're like, well, okay, try not to die, Raja. You sit here and you sweat and you bleed out the ass, and we're going to go to the peak and then come back, and hopefully we don't find a corpse. They don't leave anyone with him. They just leave him.
They just leave him there. BJ kind of kneels next to him, and says, "Oh, we're gonna go and we're gonna leave you here. We'll be back by 10." And by 10, I'm thinking 10 o'clock at night. You're gonna leave him there for over 12 hours because they're up in the morning early to leave. And if I was Raja and I was sick like that, I'd be like, "Fuck you guys, fuck you assholes."
I'd be coughing bloody stool in their face.
I'd be like, "I'm fucking out of here. If I'm not here when you get down here, I'm taking the truck and leaving your asses."
I'm gonna lick all of your water bottles. I'm gonna spit dysentery in your eyeballs. I will curse you to the end. What shitty people! Like, that is just so irresponsible. But anyway, they just leave Raja. I mean, we know from the beginning of the movie that he makes it, but
Right.
it's a surprise. I mean, I guess ironically, that was his only saving grace, was being left. I think that he was right on the dividing line. One more step past that tree, and you're dead.
But there really was no reason for him to come down with a fever or be sick in the first place. I mean, it was mentioned that he drank a lot earlier the previous night, but even they mentioned, oh well, drinking a lot doesn't give you a fever, which is, I guess, basically true. So, I mean, and if it was truly drinking the water that they've just been filling up randomly at streams and riverbanks on their way there, then why isn't anyone else sick?
Well, I guess I guess he doesn't have a very strong constitution or something. I'm surprised they didn't use it as a way to shit on vegetarians. Well, if you ate some meat, you'd be stronger. Peace. See you, Raja.
He
So
does.
they leave.
He
Just
does
leave
complain
him.
that he smokes a lot of cigarettes, though.
He does, yeah. Which, that's bad for you.
Yeah.
And that I've learned so many lessons from 6 - 5 = 2. God, what a stupid title.
It's horrible. Okay, I think we're about halfway through it now. We're about
Yeah.
50 minutes in, but they continue to hike and leave poor Raja to die by himself, probably. And they continue up the hill. Lula is continually bitching the entire way. They stop to rest. They hike again. They stop to rest. They hike again. They stop to rest. That's kind of like the motive
Yeah.
that happens throughout the entire movie.
They're just eating up film. Well, digital film.
Digital. So we see maybe Sid sets his camera down and just to take a leak, I guess, and a gust of wind comes up and his water bottle goes flying into the camera and knocks it over.
Yeah, but it comes at you like a bad effect in a 3D movie, like boogity boogity. It's right in the camera, and he's upset for a second, but again, he takes it in stride. And at this point, they're at the peak. Correct? They make
Yeah.
it. They make their way shortly after the water bottle attacks the camera. They make it to the peak, and much spastic floundering and celebration is to be had.
More selfies, more selfies with each other, lots of photos.
Yeah. And further desecration of the skull. They take a group picture with the skull that they've put on a stick. They're just I'm surprised they didn't piss in its sockets.
They put it on the stick, and apparently Lula knocks it, and it falls over in the cliff. And you just see them all looking over the cliff down and wondering why the skull why gravity took the skull over the cliff. I don't know what's going on. Why they are all just standing looking over the cliff down. But while they're doing that, we see a flame erupt in the backpack of Sid's, and his backpack just catches a flame, and everything inside it was destroyed.
I mean, it doesn't just catch fire; it bursts into flames. Like, what were you hauling a butane around? And what is there napalm in that?
They did say they had fireworks in the backpack. So that is a logical thing to come to. If it's really hot, I guess, and the sun was hitting something right, then yeah, it could set off the fireworks. Of course, I would assume they would hear the firework as it went off, but
Yeah, you think it'd make some kind of fireworky sound. I'm glad you brought that up because I thought it was I thought it was another one of these baffling moments where they're like, sometimes backpacks just burst into flame. That doesn't happen to you. No, it happens to us all the time.
so so of course Lula complains yet again about the backpack being on fire and how all the food got burnt up, and
It burned up all my Slim Jims.
for some reason Sid didn't pick up his water bottle, the ghostly water bottle that tipped over his camera. He never picked it up on his way back
Littering
because
bastard.
he asked where someone asked where his water bottle is, and he's like, "Oh, I can't find it." I was like, "Well, it should have just been in the area where your camera fell down, right? What, the ghost just pick up your goddamn water bottle and take off with it?"
You know what would have been funny is right when he said, "Where's my water bottle?" If it just flew into his hands, like, "Oh, there it is," and then he takes a sip out of it and they keep moving. They should have at that point just turn it into the comedy that it's been begging to be this whole time.
That would have been amazing. So they decide to hike back towards Raja, and as they're getting more into the forest, because right now they're kind of in a clearing out on the peak, but now they start descending back into the forest, and we hear a voice call for Lula, and they think it's Raja's voice, and they all run towards where they think the voice is coming from in the forest.
Yeah, they run in opposite directions, and they are they're following the Blair Witch template to the letter.
Yeah.
Like they in the Blair Witch Project, it was Josh, 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 and this one it's Raja, Raja, Raja. It's obligatory that we got to call our friend's name in the woods and flounder around like idiots for an unacceptable amount of screen time.
Oh yeah, they call his name for the longest time before Priya finally, they all stop and rest again, as is per usual for the movie. And while they're resting, Priya says, "That wasn't Raj's voice." And then she says all this weird stuff has been going on, but she hasn't really been witness to that much weird stuff, other than, the backpack bursting in the flames. Yeah, that's weird.
I just kind of took it at this point, and maybe we should give more credit. Like we, the audience, see all this weird shit happen, but I was just like, okay, now you're now noticing that you are you're waist deep in weirdness, and you're just now seeing the weird paranormal shit.
Most of them agree except for BJ. BJ's the pragmatist here, or the yeah, I guess the guy who doesn't believe in ghosts. And
yeah, he's the skeptical one of the bunch.
Because everyone kind of agrees right off that Priya is right on the money about ghosts. So BJ, being the intellectual he is, knows how to communicate with ghosts, and he takes a can and places it in the middle of their clearing, and he says, "If there's a ghost, this can will tip over. If there's not a ghost, well, it'll just stay there." So he puts it there, and they all stare at this can for about a minute.
I think they learned that trick from Neil deGrasse Tyson. It's very scientific.
He's definitely using scientific method. He had to come up with theory first, or hypothesis, and
couldn't be wind or the fact that I set it down unevenly. It's ghosts if this canister falls over.
I think they were even watching Priya. There's like a reference that watch her, because make sure she doesn't make a move towards it to tip it over or something. Like there's some kind of distrust there because she said it was a ghost.
I don't trust her. That ghost believer will try to ruin our little experiment here.
So instead of the can actually getting tipped over, after we were all sitting there watching this can too, and finally it actually explodes.
It
So
explodes. Yeah, it's no hyperbole here. It explodes in a cloud of vapor. It's like it was filled with a small low grade dynamite or something. And of course, everybody shits the bed and they run off in opposite directions. Like Kermit the
screaming.
Frog, Kermit the Frog flips
Yeah.
out, flails his arms. Oh no, no! That's kind of what it was like.
Yeah, they all run away screaming through the woods. The camera is shaking as I guess Sid is carrying it, and it's just chaotic. And then they stop to rest yet again.
Screaming and floundering through the woods burns up a lot of calories.
It
So
does.
they rest, and Sid hears the ghostly voice again, whispering his name.
Yeah, and they kind of mentioned that they don't really know where they're at. That maybe they kind of have an idea, but and they continue to hike a little bit more, and they rest yet again, and then they realize that hey, we don't know where the fuck we are.
And oh, by the way, our compass isn't working. Well, yeah.
Magnetism sucks.
Again, it'd be funny. Shaggy Two Dope just drops out of the trees and gives him a lesson about magnets. God, that's such a shitty old reference, but
So we have more resting and more hiking, and then they rest again, and they finally realize that they've been wandering in circles.
yeah.
And Lula,
All the stuff. Yeah, it's like have you seen the Blair Witch? Well, you've seen this movie too.
yeah,
It's like all the same stuff. There was one part that I kind of like. Like Sid complains that his back hurts, and he's got this just laughably bad stencil of a monster hand on his back. It looks like something a kid would do. You put your hand down and just spray paint it over. All was missing his little turkey head where the thumb goes.
yeah, I was expecting some kind of deep claw mark or a gash or something, but yeah, it just looks like a painted handprint that some kid would do. And
Yeah, and moving on from that too, they're upset, but they kind of take it in stride. So
yeah, I mean, there's a breakdown between Lula and Sid because Lula's blaming Sid for wanting to come out into the woods and do all this filming, and Sid just keeps calling a fat ass or fatso.
yeah, it should have been a good lesson about body shaming, but no, I guess they're not as PC as we are here in the West.
It's like Lula's like, Sid, you're the one who brought us out here. Now we have no food and water, and it's all your fault, and you're doing this. And Sid's pretty much, well, you're just a stupid fat ass.
I mean,
I'm like,
if you didn't eat all the food.
right, yeah. I'm just, oh, God. Well, they decide they're not friends anymore, and they continue on, and you see another shot of them sitting by a fire at night. And
All upset, just sad pandas, the lot of them.
and then BJ asks the girls to leave because he has to pee. And instead of peeing away from anyone, he just pees near the area. And they say, don't pee near here. What are you, crazy? And he goes, well, I heard peeing in a circle around where you're at will help, repel ghosts or something.
Well, like, and it also helps is not taking the skull from the murder tree.
Yeah, if you just not taken that goddamn skull, maybe even returned it, had the plans to return it. Maybe this murder tree was like, you know what? If they return it by nightfall, we're cool. But if they lose that motherfucker, they're dead.
I swear to God, if you drop that skull off, if you put it on a stick, don't put it on that stick. All right, they had like 3 or 4 chances to redeem themselves, and they tossed them all to the wind.
So they pissed off Murder Tree, most definitely. So now everyone's kind of lost their. You see, the camera goes off again, and then it turns back on, and everyone is asleep, and then you hear. A voice calls Sid, and he wakes everyone up. And then a voice calls Suana, and they're all like, shaking and fearful. And this is another part that just kind of threw me off. But Sid has the camera light on, and Suana or Priya insists that he turns the light off. She's like, turn the light off. Turn the light off.
I like it scarier.
I'm like, why would you want to turn the light off? That's your only source of light. And then, of course, he turns the light off. You hear stuff rustling around. You hear names. You hear all this spooky shit, and of course you hear them start running in the dark. And then the light finally comes back on as they're running, through the dark, screaming. And they decide to rest yet again, and they sit on the ground, and And
I mean, you know what it felt like to me is that the filmmaker said, "Hey, we forgot to do the part of the movie where they just flounder through the woods, and then you got the night camera behind them." I like that in the Blair Witch Project. There's no reason for them to really be running through the woods. You don't, but nothing that they've done has made much sense in the logical world.
no, no, absolutely not at all. And it just keeps getting more illogical as we go on because we're going into day 5 now.
Could you imagine spending 5 days with these schlubs?
I can't imagine spending 5 days out in the wilderness, anyways.
With people I like,
But with people
like
I like, I spent one day camping with people I liked, and I got tired of it very, very quickly.
I mean, usually by day 2, I've already, exposed myself drunkenly to somebody. So by day 3, it's a good thing that we're going back to our own lives. But, not with these guys.
No, they're in it to
In
win
it.
here.
Yes, yes. But they, when they wake up in the morning, there's these soccer ball sized, like, what would you call them? Straw balls that
Yeah,
somebody has left for them in the night and set in this little semicircle around.
they're considered grave markers for people that haven't been found. And
Oh,
yeah, out wherever it's kind of like the tomb of the unknown soldier. The body was never actually found, but or I don't even know what I'm
yeah.
talking about.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
It's basically it's them. It's here's your graves, people. It's not make it's
That's what I meant to say. It's them. It's supposed to be their grave markers. I'll just cut that all out.
leave it in, guys.
Yeah, okay, I'll leave that in. I'm an idiot. But they did from there. They kind of just like make a mention of that, in passing, and then they decide which direction to go. To
They're
me,
never
if I
upset enough by the
yeah,
fact like, they never say the thing that a human being would say, like, is there somebody out here? Is somebody fucking with us? Where are you? Like yelling into the woods. Like it's a very typical kind of like, show yourself, where are you? But that's what a person would do. These people are not, they're just new to the planet.
it's like I said, it's this whole other world that they must live in the horror universe that they're so naive. Because if let's put ourselves in their place. If we were on camp, we got lost, this shit starts happening, then we wake up in the morning and there's 5 grave markers, and we know what those grave markers mean, and there's 5 of us. I'm looking around, going, did one of you guys do this? None of you guys did this. Holy shit, we need to fucking leave. We're gonna die.
Yeah, or I'd try to be mean mugging the people that were fucking with me and be like, hey, if I see you, I'm going to kill you. Like, you got to project a little bit.
I think at this point too that they've kind of given up trying to look for Raja. Now I think they're just trying to get out themselves.
Yeah, I think that they seem to be sad and just beaten that they can't find their way home. Lula goes up in a tree, he climbs a tree, and he proclaims that he can see the mountaintop around this time. And then they all cheer because they're fucking dumb.
Yay! But we also see where.
Hooray.
Hooray! There's also a point where Priya feels like crap, and you see her kind of walking weakly, and then she passes out. And then
Yeah.
Lula and BJ go to find water, and then BJ calls for Sid and Suwana, who have been staying with Priya during this time, and then they leave. The camera's still on, of course, and every time something weird is about to happen, the camera switches from color to black and white.
Yeah.
And so that happens, and all of a sudden we see Priya's body after a few seconds of just sitting there. It leaps up, levitates.
Yeah, she levitates above the ground.
Levitates, yeah.
And then the camera like cuts back, and then she just falls back down to the ground. Like you'd think it'd give her a mild concussion, or
Yeah.
you think she'd wake up going, "Did you guys just boot stomp the shit out of me while I was sleeping? What happened?"
It's a cheap effect to be sure. Especially when it went back to the ground, you're like, there's.
Yeah, no one fell anywhere. It's a it's a weird mix of bafflingly unexpected and then just painfully expected in this movie. Like exactly what's going to happen, but the characters are so fucking weird.
But they keep going. Priya eventually wakes up. She says, "How long was I out?" And they say half an hour. She's like, "Half an hour? Oh, geez!" And then she gets up and walks fine. So
Yeah, yeah.
So they continue to hike, and they come full circle to where that can blew up, that little clearing, and they
So
decide to
they've been
they decide to
going in circles.
yeah, they've been going in circles, so they decide to yell for help. Help! Help! We get about a minute of them yelling for help, which surprise doesn't work, and and then that's where we see Lula kind of looks up into the trees and starts climbing, and he says he saw the direction where they need to go, and they all do their half-hearted celebration. No, they didn't do half-hearted. So they actually did full-hearted celebrations.
Oh, they leaned into it. Yeah,
Yeah.
we get some top of the mountain kind of celebration floundering.
So Sid tries to make friends with Lula again, but Lula kind of accepts his apology, and they're kind of ribbing each other, and all of a sudden Lula just kind of starts walking weird, and then Sid's foot gets hurt or something, but we see Lula facing a tree behind.
Yeah, he's doing the Blair Witch tree thing, like or the just he's Lula is grinding his face into the bark of the tree, and just he turns around. The effect isn't very good. It looks like some Party City stuff that you could just stick on your face. But he rubs the flesh raw on his face, and then he's talking in this demonic voice that's kind of like, all right, he's possessed by the ghosts of the forest.
Right, and he starts running off, and Sid attempts to chase after him. The funny thing about this demon possession is that Lula. Have you ever watched Tim and Eric?
I'm familiar with them. Yeah.
Okay, there's the Tim and Eric's $1 billion movie. There's a scene where they run cross country, and they have their hands to the side,
Yeah, like lizards
running and that's how Lula was running. And all I could think of was that Tim and Eric moment in that movie where they're just running.
Because those are two kind of schlubby dudes, so it's perfect. Yeah, I mean, and it's not at all scary. It's charming.
Yeah.
In the same way that a child trying to lie to you is kind of charming. Like, that's funny. Look at you trying to make a movie. Isn't that cute? But so Lula is victim number one, really, right? He's the first official victim.
Yeah, first official victim. He kind of runs off. We never see him again.
We do see him briefly when
yeah.
Another one of those annoying scenes when the camera sees things and the audience does, but no one else does. We briefly see Lula hanging from a tree, so
right,
he's done been got.
He's done been got. When we say hanging by a tree, he's just kind of tied to the tree a little bit. Looks like.
Yeah, just kind of hanging there. I didn't see anything around his throat or anything, but it was a brief thing. It was like Sid was dicking around with the camera, and then you could see behind Sid that Lula's body was in the tree.
Right, and so now we see that the group had tried to locate Lula, but so they decide to rest yet again, and then we see them asleep, and then the camera turns back on, and then it turns black and white, and then we know something's going to happen, and all of a sudden something starts choking Suana, and basically drags her away into the night.
Yeah, an invisible force chokes her, drags her, and then how did this happen? She gets choked. They gets dragged off into the woods. And when they find her, she's got like these fizzing, bubbling wounds on her, like the Alka-Seltzer monster had been attacking her or something. It was, yeah.
Yeah, they find her with all these wounds on her, and you think, I thought she was dead, but apparently she wasn't, so they just pick her up and take her back to the campsite where they're at. Priya, of course, is like, we got to get out of here, but they've kind of already been saying they need to get out of there.
Go where?
And go where?
Yeah, they've been walking around in a mile-long circle for the half of the movie.
For some reason, something happens to Priya's knee. Nothing really comes of that, but, they continue to walk. And
she's a drama queen. She just being included.
So they go back to the campsite, and we see the camera light goes out. Then the light turns on, and that's when they see Lula's body tied up in a tree. It's like we see it, but no one else sees it.
Right. His hefty carapace is now food for the carrion birds. But oh well, that's moving on. Yeah, it's like us describing it is almost better than the movie itself as far as the effectiveness of these scenes. Well, not really, because I'm obviously describing it with not a whole lot of
So they find the trail marker. BJ had left a trail marker on a tree, just kind of like notched a couple of things and marks into a tree with a
Good thinking, BJ.
and that is a good thing to do if you
Yeah.
just keep doing it as you walk, not just do it once and then walk for miles. But yeah, they find that one mark that BJ left, and they're like, "Oh, we're on the right trail." So they decide just to stay in the area at night and sleep again.
Hmm.
And the camera turns on. Sid wakes up and he's holding his stomach, and I'm imagining he's probably having a horrible case of dysentery by this point. Uh,
After drinking all that stagnant pond water.
yeah.
Yeah. So he
So
runs off to the woods to take a violent poo, I guess.
yeah,
And
Priya
Rudy
follows
goes
him.
with him.
Yeah. Priya decides to follow him. She says, "Oh, you need some water or something." So she goes with him as they leave the camera, and all that's left is BJ and Suhana lying there on the ground
And
asleep.
BJ's sleeping, and Suwana sits up and does this twirly head thing like she's at a heavy metal concert. You know, the
Yeah,
helicopter head. That move, like she's flopping her hair around. It's not scary.
it's not scary. It's like, well, yeah, this is something I do at a Motorhead concert. But
Yeah, I know. It's something I do during the guitar solo that's really wicked. And then she gets up, retrieves a big rock, and just smashes BJ's head flat with it. And he flounders around like a trout out of water. It's pretty funny.
yeah,
It's to not be funny, but I was chuckling.
I was like, okay, finally we're just seeing some really cool stuff. It's not that graphic. They have some fake blood that kind of spews out, but yeah, it smashes his head, and then she picks up a knife, walks towards the camera, kneels down, and then puts the blade up to her throat and basically cuts her throat.
Yeah, and then falls over dead. Again, the images that you have in your head are a lot more terrifying than what you see on camera
Exactly.
because none of it was that upsetting. And so Sid, after he's empty, this part was weird to me. Sid comes back with no Priya.
Right,
There's
that's
no
what I
Priya.
said.
Yeah, he just comes back and he's very upset because BJ's head is flat and Suwana's gurgling and dead. Well, not gurgling; she's just good and dead.
Yeah. Yeah, so at this point, I'm wondering where Priya is. Either why did they leave? Why did they leave that certain part open? I mean, is this something they're? I can't even imagine trying to predict if they even wanted a sequel to this or not.
Oh God in heaven! Well, 6 - 5 = 2. There you go. Now it makes sense. It doesn't make a lick of sense.
No, no,
But that's it.
I'm bad at math anyways. But when you start really fucking me over with bad math, I have to start questioning even my own basic arithmetic. That
I have horrible flashbacks. I think back to the math teacher that really was condescending and mean and nasty old kraut bastard. I can say that because I too am a kraut, but you know.
But yes, Sid comes back, and he's walking. He takes the camera with him after he discovers the bodies, and he's freaking out. And he's walking fearfully through the forest, and then something calls his name, and then, wait for it.
He just fucking flops down dead, doesn't he?
No, we see the cheesy skeleton witch thing
Oh yeah.
surprise and kill him or his
Yeah.
body is dragged away. But this thing is something that's from the 99-cent store Halloween
Yeah.
section. It's just a quick, maybe 1 second flash, and you're like, wow, I've got this hanging on my front door right now for Halloween.
Yeah,
And I know it's only
it was
September.
it was Party City all the way. You know those rubber rats that they make by the truckload at Party City every Halloween? It was about that scary.
Yeah, so not that frightening, and thankfully the movie ends pretty much there with Sid's body being dragged away. I think there's eventually there is a flashback earlier where Raja is back in the studio with the producer, and he's discussing.
Oh, that's right. He basically he explains that I woke up, I went back to the whatever you call the custodians of the woods, and then they called out the troops to go and find my missing friends. He basically fills in that little piece of exposition that we probably would have been fine with or without.
Yeah, I would assumed. Well, I mean, I would assumed he was just dead. That would be a basic. Of course, then it wouldn't be what 6 - 5 equals.
Equals 2. After
Yeah, it would just be 1. It would be actually math that works.
There was another part of this movie that I just now thought of that, and it's kind of a running theme throughout this. It for some reason it bugged me, and it's kind of it's a non-issue at this point, but throughout the beginning part of the movie, there's all kinds of near nudity with the dudes. They're walking around in their bikini briefs and they're damn near skinny dipping. And they in one part of the movie, the group makes their way to this beautiful waterfall and they all splash around in the water. And the dudes are all half naked, but the girls are just wearing their clothes, but they're still flopping around in the water. I'm like, you guys are you're gonna be all chafed and uncomfortable as that stuff dries, like I don't want to be a creep or anything, but like we'll turn our heads just,
Yeah.
it seemed weird. I don't know if it's a cultural thing or if just female nudity is a big old no-no in that, but
Yeah, that might be the thing. It might be just a cultural thing, but yeah, it's weird. It's just like, the guy swimming in his underwear and t-shirt, or not his underwear and t-shirt, but like jean shorts and a t-shirt.
Well, and the one dude was wearing like black bikini briefs. I was thinking like, and I'm a fucking creep, but I was thinking like it'd be nice if we could see her in that. But okay, no, no, thanks, movie, for absolutely nothing. Not even a momentary reprieve from the dumbness. But
Well, I mean, we got to see some good booty shots. So.
yeah, they were beautiful women.
Oh, I was talking about
of
guys.
him.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, if that's what you're into, yeah.
But yeah,
It's the uncut version we see from Lula's perspective. That would be a grisly scene.
oh God, I died just a little bit inside.
That's because you're imagining it.
Thankfully, the movie does end with Sid's body being dragged away, and we have the producer or a narrator talking about how the people were never seen again, or so the five of them were confirmed dead, or four of them were confirmed dead, and Priya was just considered missing.
Yeah, and I mean, just it's laziness. It's one of everybody's justifiable frustrations with these found footage movies is that they get away with murder. They there's no soundtrack, so you save how much money by not having a score. You can get away with the amateurish cinematography because it's a found footage movie, and and all of this just chewing up the scenery, just sitting there with nothing going on, is done under the pretense of building tension. But it's just sloth. It's just laziness. It's why everybody hates these kind of movies so much.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if these guys just, I think you might have mentioned it in your notes that if this was just kind of like a couple of guys that had a camera in their village or their neighborhood where they're at, and they're like, hey, let's just film a movie that's like the Blair Witch. It's not going to be really released worldwide, just on Netflix streaming. Who watches that? And,
I mean, maybe a couple of dumbasses in America will do a podcast about it. I'd be willing to bet that other people have reviewed this movie. I try not to listen to any of the other reviews that are out there that we're of the same movies we're doing. I don't want to be inadvertently influenced.
No, I don't either. But it seems like one of those little passion projects just from a filmmaker that wanted to do something kind of like 13 Demons, where you saw it was kind of a small little project, independent project, and they did it. So more power to them. It looked like a fun film because the terrain was beautiful and they got to hang with in beautiful regions and locations, and
they're probably all friends. I mean, I bet I bet just the home movie footage that they filmed of them at the after parties was probably a lot more fun in some ways. It's obviously I'm shitting all over it, but it was charming in a way too. It was goofy and silly and just painfully predictable. I wish that people would stop trying to use other movies as the template to make their movie, and it seems to happen in Indian movies a lot. They like, let's make the Blair Witch Project, but the Indian version of it. Let's make the Exorcist, but it's our version. America does that too, and I always hate it.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't want to shit all over the movie either. There's some charming moments, and I did like I did like the interaction between the guys and everybody. I thought they had a great chemistry together. They're all joking, and I actually I was smiling during those parts, but at the same time, nothing of that was advancing the plot in any way.
No,
So that's the part that was frustrating me. I was like, oh, this is really a fun time, and I can get it, but what does this have to do with the movie?
Yeah, if it's a stand-up comedy show, you wouldn't have laughed once, unfortunately.
Right.
But when it comes to laughter, I was laughing accidentally. They didn't realize what they had. They had a comedy, and they just didn't know it.
Okay, so I guess that ends 6 minus 5 equals 2.
Yeah, and we're at a very important benchmark in the podcast. The next movie that we have is called A Dark Song, and it's our first one with an actual letter.
Oh my God, we are jumping into the A's.
Yes.
I'm very excited. I'm very excited to get out of the numbers. This has been 7 weeks. We've been in the numbers, so now we're finally jumping to the A's, and I think you're doing some new artwork for the A's.
I am. In typical me style, I'm working on a piece of artwork that has nothing to do with the A part of it. I'm doing something for Facebook. We can use it for the A's. We're doing the character, and it's going to be the new header artwork for a little while. So that should be fun. It's a lot of horror movie icons in one picture. I hope people like it.
Yeah, I think the idea was that as we progress through the different letters of the alphabet, we're going to have different thumbnails for each episode. So please come by the SoundCloud page or the Facebook page or even Twitter, and that you'll see the new artwork there, and hopefully you will enjoy it, because sometimes it will be gruesome, sometimes it will be even more gruesome.
That's right. Yes. A is for acid, or A is for what other words start with A that we can inflict upon our poor man?
Armadillo. Oh no, I'm thinking of the dictionary, but aardvark.
There we go.
So I think that brings us to what was the next movie
it's called A Dark Song.
A Dark Song. Any idea what it's about?
I have seen it. So it is about it is a paranormal thriller, and I don't want to give out too many spoilers, but it's a competent movie. I'll say that. Like it's I think that we're going to enjoy reviewing this one.
Awesome! I can't wait to queue it up and give it a spin this week.
Absolutely.
But thank you, everybody, for joining us for another episode of Cinematic Suffering. This has been such a great time. I look forward to doing this every week.
I do too.
I really do
too. I hope that the people listening, all 10 of you, enjoy it too.
Yeah. And if you're listening from another country, like you guys, I've noticed when we've reviewed 1920 or 1920 London, and I know it's probably going to happen with this one, that we do get a lot of views from India and Bangladesh and around that area, even some just from the Asian countries, and we thank you. I hope we're not insulting your culture.
Well, I hope not too, because we from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate the little peek into other people's culture that you get from movies that are done in other countries, and we've enjoyed them even when we criticize them. It's been a fun experience, and we feel like we spent time with those characters, which I enjoy. So
yeah, absolutely. So again, thanks everyone, and we will catch you next week.
All right, peace, y'all.
Peace. Take it easy, guys. Hey guys, just a few plugs and shout-outs before we end this episode. Clay is an extremely talented and twisted comic artist, and you should visit his pride and joy, hboys.com. That's HBOYZ.com. If you're a fan of death and black metal, check out Jason's band Gravehill on all social media platforms, as well as his doom metal project, Stygian Crown. Music was provided by Face X Hugger. Check out Face X Hugger on Bandcamp and Twitter for more synthwave, horror-themed music. Questions, comments, and hate mail should be directed to our Twitter account @CinematicSuffer. Thanks for listening.